taking your product to market in a complex industry. Moderated by Rado Adrian, 𝐂𝐝-Gemini Engineering, Andrian Consulting. With Dr. Michael Watts, Blüm Health Limited. And Salma Houari, RaiseV.
Wow, that was tough. That's lots of walls. It's going to be hard to just like jump on the other side and go into the market then. Hello everyone, I'm Rado Adrian. I'm a digital health consultant and I basically help pharma companies, MedTech companies, health tech startups really get into the market, build the strategies, build programs and create value-driven products. And with me for this panel I've got Salma and Michael. I'll let you introduce yourself briefly.
Thanks, Rado. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Michael Watts. I'm an NHS doctor based in the UK by background. More recently, co-founder and managing director of Blüm Health Limited, a startup based in the UK that's worked on a suite of solutions, software solutions, to deliver sort of patient-centric, impactful and scalable software to the NHS, but also globally as well.
Good morning, everyone. Is it on?
Yeah.
So I'm Salma. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm the founder and managing partner of RaiseV. We are a one-stop venture firm that focuses on creating value for startups, corporations, and for our investors. We do so through capability development, acceleration programs, and access to finance, and the convergence of exponential technologies, of which IoT, blockchain, and AI, into four focus areas, which is healthcare, circular economy, education in developing countries, is at the core of the firm. I also have a background in biopharmaceuticals, where I was responsible for setting up an open innovation platform for 7 therapeutic areas. And there I really was building a bridge between the startup ecosystem and the corporate teams, focusing on co-creation and really building MedTech solutions. And other than that, I'm also a startup judge, advisor, and mentor. You'll be seeing me in a bit during the startup pitches. For instance, European Innovation Council. So that's a bit about me. Good to connect with you today and hopefully enjoy the talk.
Yeah, that's good. So, well, I've got 15 minutes. We cannot really go on a course, you know, a strategy class about really taking your product to market. So we'll try to focus on 3 key steps. One is really the build-up in terms of your company, your product, your value prop, and then we'll look at, once you're there, you know, how do you anchor and build your presence in the market? What are the key points? And the last point, we'll just touch on the growth, expansion. How do you put that in place? So I'll start with you, Michael. I mean, you're taking that adventure, so can you tell a bit more about that build-up and really, you know, the key elements in that phase?
Yeah. So I think the build-up is probably one of the hardest parts. We went on quite a journey as a startup, and I was quite fortunate that I found a really strong co-founding team. There was myself as a clinician, but my co-founding partners were both a software engineer and a UX/UI designer. So we really had the skills that we needed to deliver a solution as leanly as possible. But I was quite, you know, there's multiple accelerators around the world, and a lot of this is about connecting people up, and I think it's really difficult. You know, there's a lot of talent out there, but actually connecting people is difficult, and I think finding that right team, finding someone that's going to go on that journey with you is really difficult. We were lucky, but that's because, you know, we were determined to deliver value to patients, and obviously I was determined to create something that drove value to patients as a clinician. So that determination came with an opportunity, but I think finding a good founding team is one of the most critical parts of any startup from that day one, really. You know, it's all part of the sort of 0 to 1 theory. The lean startup is about, you know, doing as little as possible to prove the value and then working from there. But actually, you know, getting from 0 to 1 is really hard work. It takes the team, it takes support. We've just seen there previously that actually the regulation alone can kill a company, because how do you find the funding to go through the processes that the FDA require? You know, that's a lot of money that you need just to get through the front door, to then actually find early adopters, buyers, that procurement process is really, really hard work. So, you know, it's a tough approach, and there's no wonder that, you know, 95% of startups, or whatever the exact figure is, fail. It's because there are so many barriers at that initial point.
Salma, you have from your own work.
Sure. I just want to add to that, and we also saw that in the previous session. Well, there is a range of factors that feed into making that process successful, so getting your product to market in a very complex market. But the factors that I would definitely like to highlight here is product market fit, as we just heard in the previous session, is to really look at what the market needs, right? So, and what is needed in that process is to engage the multiple stakeholders that are part of that value chain. We know that the healthcare system is very complex, but also very much interconnected. So we need to seek holistic solutions that will add value to multiple stakeholders in that value chain. So I think whenever you're building a solution, if we take the perspective of a startup, is to really, during your research phase to engage those startups in that building of your product. To make sure that the end solution will actually fit what the market needs. So I think that would be one of the factors that definitely is required, focusing on like a quadruple helix engagement of stakeholders in that value chain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because we mentioned market fit before. We just heard, okay, it's tough to be lean, and you just said, but you can be lean still. How do you marry that? And, you know, because it's complex, and that's really taking us to the second point of really getting to that market. So, how do you remain a medical device, or, you know, software as medical device, and still start small, grow big, grow fast?
I think, like Salma said, it's about, you know, proving the concept and really making sure that your idea is perfect for what you're trying to achieve. Having, you know. So one of our focuses with Blüm Health was actually supporting other people on their journey and turning ideas into realities. But what we'd find is that people often came with solutions, and that's fine, but they hadn't actually thought about the problem. And I know this is going back to sort of Startup 101, but I think that is the key, is actually what is the problem, and talking to those key stakeholders about the size of the problem. And because I said this yesterday in the talk about AI, and it applies to all technology, it applies to all MedTech for sure, is that you will soon get caught out if you haven't done your homework, whether that be the impact size, you know, do patients really want it, do clinicians really need it? And so that public engagement, that, you know, it's written all over every sort of grant fund or investor opportunity that you get, is what research have you done in the background of creating this really cool technology, because the two go hand in hand, and actually is probably more important than the solution itself, is actually what is the problem that you're trying to solve, how big is it, and how are you going to get there. So I think, you know, that from a regulatory perspective, that all fits into that. You know, the regulation needs to tie in with the impact size, you know, how you're going to do it safely, and so these were things that I wish I knew when I started out on this journey, which is why it's great to have, you know, conferences like this, accelerator programs like the Clinical Entrepreneur Program in the UK, to guide and to support us SMEs on that journey.
Yeah, just to add to that also, so aside to building a solution that is actually a solution for your end user, your patient, your key opinion leader, etc., you'll also get buy-in in a very early stage and adoption by engaging them in that process, right? So I think it's really necessary to not only make sure your solution fits their needs, but also to get early buy-in and adoption. And just to add to the market research bit, that's when I go through hundreds of pitch decks, that's sometimes what I see is missing from a pitch deck is proper market research. Really doing your research on your competitive environments. There are loads of MedTech solutions out there that are also being initiated on a daily basis, but it's also key to do your research on what your competitor is doing and how you're actually differentiating yourself versus your competitor, and that in combination with what your end user, or client, or patient, key opinion leader actually needs. Yeah.
I think just to add to that, I think I like the drill analogy, the fact that whenever a consumer or an end user buys a drill, they don't actually want a drill, they want a hole in the wall. So it's thinking about, you know, how do you deliver the best service to get to that end solution, because you know, they could take a sledgehammer to the wall and they'd still get a hole in the wall, but it's not going to be fit for purpose. So it's about finding the right solution to solve their actual problem, and it's not always the thing that they actually need that would deliver that solution. So that's quite a nice analogy there, the fact that people buy a drill not because they want one, because they want a hole in the wall.
Or they might want the limousine of the drills because it feels more comfortable. But, well, I'm mentioning that because it's part of it, isn't it? That experience that you want, you know, assuming, yes, you've addressed the needs, but how do you get that essence of experience, you know? You want that desirability. I don't know if people know here read about the tipping point from Malcolm Gladwell. And it's the idea that something can go viral. How do you imprint that in your strategy? And can we do it in the health tech?
I think it's difficult. I think the reason that things go like viral, or the reason that things succeed is that those people, those organisations really know their customer well. I think that is a really important thing, and I think that healthcare is a complex industry. The National Health Service in the UK is incredibly complex. How do you start to understand that business before you sell to it? Because it's compartmentalized. You can sell to one trust. They might have one budget, but the neighbour might have a totally different budget with a totally different drive. So it's a really, really difficult thing to know that customer. But if you don't do your homework again, and you go into a room offering them something that they don't even need, then again you'll get caught out. And I think that you only do get one shot in this industry to prove the trust and to prove the authenticity and to prove the value that you're driving. So I think if you don't go in there fully informed, fully confident, then you do get caught out. And I think that for me was my sort of learnings over the last 18 months as a startup co-founder, is really ensuring that you've got absolutely everything in order, and you do have that chance to go viral, because you only get one shot at doing that first time.
Yeah. Do you want to add something, Salma?
Yeah, sure. So to really find that sweet spot and also to accelerate on your journey to the market, I would go back again to really understanding the needs of your key stakeholders in the sense, plus operational efficiency and speed, in the sense that you would need the right team, as you just mentioned. The go-to-market strategy needs to be in place, of which also regulatory approvals. Of course, once you have those, I mean, there's a very strong correlation between obtaining regulatory approvals, having the right patents and IPs, and attracting the right investors and financing to be able to accelerate your go-to-market strategy, which is operational efficiency and speed. And if you have the right team and all the means in place, that will further reinforce that route to market. So that's just to add to your point there, Michael. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is something you said, and I like, and it ties to the last point of expansion. You just mentioned, you go to the NHS, you knock at one door, and then you go knock at the other door. I lived in the UK, so you have the 5 regions in terms of the distribution of services. That really ties into the expanding your business. And I'll start with you, maybe Salma, because you're helping those companies. Do you think that's really in place when people get started, that they have that vision of how they will grow?
Not always. That's why there are plenty of accelerator programs available, incubation programs available. If we look at the healthcare market, there are a lot of researchers and scientists that have actually found a problem that they wanted to solve, or they saw an opportunity they want to take advantage of and bring it to the market. So they're at their core specialists in their own domains, but don't necessarily have the business acumen to bring it to market. Mm-hmm. So I think these programs are very, very helpful in that sense, to add that business acumen to it, to then be able to bring your product to market in this sense. Yeah.
I totally agree with that, Salma. I think accelerators are great. They give you the network, they give you the basic knowledge, sort of mini MBA type knowledge. But once you fly that nest, you are in that big wide world, and it feels like getting a job for the first time. You try and get a job, but they ask for experience. But how do you gain experience when everyone's asking you for experience? It's like, and it's very much the same with a startup or with an organization, an SME. It's actually how do you find that first adopter? So one of the big challenges in the UK is finding that initial NHS trust that will take on your idea, take a chance, because they see the value, because they see the opportunity to support their patients and their staff. Once you get that, I think that's the start of the tipping point, because if you can prove it there, then other NHS trusts will start to see, or other hospitals will start to see, you know, this is really good, this is quite clearly working, you know, we want a piece of the action too. But it is that initial early adopter, and it's like the YouTube video where the first guy's dancing and no one wants to join in, but then once the second person joins in, everyone starts dancing. It's exactly the same analogy of actually, you know, that sort of curve of early adoption before you get that traction. But it's difficult. Finding those people they're out there for sure, and I think this is why Malta sets a really good example for actually thinking about taking an opportunity and seeing where it goes, and then, you know, you can trial it across the entire island, and I think there's a lot of value to that, and I think it will certainly set an example for other countries that don't do that.
Yeah, and as we heard earlier in the talk, I mean, they mentioned the concept of a test bed, and since we're in a regulated market, it makes sense, because you have a highly proficient digital therapeutics, or, you know, software as medical device. You want to try it in countries where the regulations are lower, maybe, or adoption rate can be faster. But do you think there is one solution fit all? I mean, obviously regulators in different countries are different. So how do you tune to that so that you enable growth and not get stopped?
It's difficult. I think the important thing is to do your homework and look at what the regulation requires. You know, you can take lessons from the big regulators like FDA and MHRA in the UK, and actually sort of make sure that you're as compliant as possible from the start, as long as budgets allow. And I think then once you've got that universal sort of safety net, then it shouldn't really matter where you go to test your solution. I mean, one thing I would say, Rado, is I totally agree. I think Malta is a great test bed, but once again, as we've known, that, you know, coming to Malta and saying, can I try it here, is not going to be good enough. You need to say, this is what I'm going to do for the Maltese healthcare system, and you know, once I've done it here, yes, we can take it anywhere else. And I think that's the key, is that we don't just assume that testing is going to happen in a small. I think someone described it as a petri dish, which I think is not massively understating Malta's opportunity and value. So, but I think you know, it does make sense to actually try something here, create value here, and then expand with you know, regulation always in mind from day one.
Well, I think one of the opportunities here, when you really think about it, is that you can leapfrog some of the countries. I mean, Latvia was mentioned, and that's what they did. I think it's an opportunity to bring, you know, we were talking earlier about moonshot, and when you create your startup, I think that's where you need to think. Last word, we're off now.
Why don't you answer it, actually, because I know you have loads of experience and to share with us and insights, so
well,
by all means do share.
I would just say, a last word is just think of it as a, you know, take a moonshot on what you do in your startup. The tech will follow. So that would conclude our discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael and Salma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.